I was staring at the symbol for this deep dive, the bed, and I realized something that actually kind of bothered me.
Bother you how?
Well, think about where we just came from. The previous star, Uttara Phalguni.
Mm-hmm.
That was the front legs of the bed.
Right, the hammock, the romance.
Exactly. The initial spark, just total relaxation.
Yeah.
But now we look at Uttara Phalguni, and the symbol shifts to the back legs of the bed.
Yeah.
And the sources are really, really specific about this.
It's not just the other end of the furniture.
No. It feels like a completely different psychological weight. It's the difference between the jump and the landing.
That's a good way to put it.
And it made me wonder, and this is really the core question for me today, why does that wild romantic thrill almost always demand a boring contract to actually survive? Why do we have to move from the fun part to the back legs, the heavy structural part?
That is the great paradox of human connection, isn't it? We crave the spark, but you can't live inside an explosion. Eventually, if you want that fire to cook your food, to warm your house through the winter, you have to put it in a hearth. You have to contain it.
You have to give it structure.
That's the shift we're looking at. We're moving from the pure desire for union to the formalization of it.
So the love affair is officially becoming a marriage.
Exactly. We are signing the papers.
Okay, so this is our deep dive into Uttara Phalguni, and I think we have to start with the astronomy, because the sources make such a big deal about where this star sits.
They do.
We're not just moving to the next star in line.
Yeah.
It feels like we are crossing a massive border in the sky.
We are. This is one of the most significant shifts in the whole zodiac. Uttara Phalguni bridges two signs. It starts in the very tail end of Leo.
The last few degrees.
The last, say, 3.5 degrees, and then it crosses over into the first 10 degrees of Virgo.
So we're leaving the king's palace and heading for the counting house?
In a way, yes. You are stepping out of Leo, which is that pure royal solar ego, the performance, the drama, and you're stepping into Virgo.
Which is a totally different beast.
Completely. It's about service, details, practical work, hygiene. It's the engine room, not the stage.
But the ruler of the star itself is still the sun, right?
Correct. The sun rules the star. So in that first little slice that falls in Leo, that first pada or quarter, you get this incredible double dose of solar energy.
Sun ruling the sign, sun ruling the star.
Exactly. And that creates a thirst for leadership, for honor. It's intensely authoritative. That first section produces leaders who need to be seen as the king in his prime.
It's solar power squared.
It is. But, and this is where the sources get really fascinating, the second you cross that border into Virgo, the energy changes.
How so?
You still have the sun's soul power, but now it's filtering through Mercury, which rules Virgo.
The notes used a really specific analogy for this. They called it the king and the prince.
It's the perfect metaphor. I mean, think about courtly life. Who is the only person who isn't terrified of the king?
The prince, his son.
Right. Who can walk into the throne room, crack a joke, maybe even offer a correction without losing their head.
Only the prince.
Exactly. Mercury is the prince. He has this intellectual bond with the sun. He isn't awed by the power. He understands how to administer it.
Oh, I see.
So when this solar energy of Uttara Phalguni moves into Virgo, it stops just being the king and starts, doing the work of the kingdom.
So it's the difference between sitting on the throne looking majestic and actually reading the trade agreements.
Precisely. It's the king taking off the crown to balance the ledger. It retains the dignity, but it gains humor, discrimination, and a massive capacity for practical work.
Which leads us directly to the deity here.
Yeah.
The guy running the show.
Yeah.
We came from Bhaga, the god of pleasure. Now we have Aryaman.
Aryaman, a very different character.
Yeah, the texts describe him as one of the solar deities, an aditya. But his job description feels oddly bureaucratic for a god.
He is the god of contracts, patronage, and nobility. But if you really want to get him, you have to look at the etymology of his name.
Which is...
One translation is a friend who asks a girl to marry his friend.
Wait. So he's not the groom, he's the matchmaker.
He is the cosmic best man. And think about that role for a second. He isn't the groom who is, lost in the passion and the nerves of the moment.
He's the guy standing next to him.
He's the guy making sure the ring is actually in the pocket. He's making sure the guests are seated, the vows are witnessed. He's the logistics.
So Bhaga, the previous guy, was the romance. Aryaman is the wedding planner.
He is. And in the traditional Vedic wedding ceremony, Aryaman is explicitly invoked to witness the sacred vows.
He represents the rules of society.
He makes sure this private passion fits within the framework of civilization.
That's it. It's about etiquette, social graces, and keeping your word. Aryaman hates scandal. He wants things to be proper, noble, gentlemanly.
The sources also mentioned a connection to the ancestors, the Pitzers.
Yes, and this is important. Even Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita identifies himself with Aryaman as the chief of the ancestors.
Which reinforces that idea of lineage. It does. Aryaman protects the family line. He ensures the marriage isn't just for fun, but that it produces a legacy. He's the benevolent protector of tradition.
So practically speaking, if you're listening to this and you have, say, your moon or ascendant in Uttara Phalguni, does that mean you're naturally the best man type?
In a psychological sense, absolutely. These are the people naturally inclined toward patronage. They want to help. They are the expert counselors.
See, I know a guy who can help you with that person.
Or the you two really should meet person. They get their purpose from facilitating connections for others. They are quite literally the friend in need.
The glue of their social circle.
Yes. They're the ones who organize the dinner parties, not just to party, but to connect people. They are the networkers of the zodiac, but with a very noble, helpful intention.
Okay, let's loop back to the symbols because we started with the bed, the back legs. The source material said this isn't just about sleeping.
No. If the front legs are about falling into sleep or falling into love, the back legs represent the latter half of that state.
The waking up.
And healing. In ancient times, the bed wasn't just for sleep. It was where you recovered from illness. Aryaman is heavily associated with alleviating suffering. It's a place of active restoration.
Preparing for activity.
Exactly. The feeling of waking up after a long illness or just a really good night's sleep and feeling ready to tackle the day, that is the energy of the back legs.
And this ties into the other symbol, right? The fig tree.
Right.
Purva Phalguni was the little fig tree, but this one is the fully grown fig tree.
And what does a fully grown tree do that a little one can't?
It bears fruit.
Productivity. The previous star had potential. This star has output. It's the difference between saying, I have a great idea for a book, and actually holding the printed copy in your hand.
Uttara Phalguni is obsessed with tangible results.
It wants to see the fruit of its labor.
There was that story in the notes about King Janaka that I thought was fascinating. The king ascetic.
Such a great illustration of this energy.
It sounds like a massive contradiction. How can you be a king and an ascetic?
It does, but it captures the star perfectly. So King Janaka ruled a massive palace, wealth, power, the whole works, but he was also enlightened.
Oh, yep.
A sage wanted to test him. So Janaka asked the sage to walk around the palace carrying a lamp brimful of oil, and he says, if you spill a single drop, I'll have you executed.
Wow. Talk about a high-stakes tour.
Very. So the sage walks through the golden halls, past the dancers, the musicians, the feasts. He comes back terrified, but not a drop spilled.
And Janaka asks him what he saw.
Asks him, did you see the dancers? Did you smell the food? And the sage says,
I saw nothing but the oil. I was terrified of spilling it.
exactly. And Janaka says, that's how I rule.
That's how I rule. That's powerful.
He lives in the palace, but his mind is on the lamp. That is Uttara Phalguni. It gives you the ability to be in the world, to sign contracts, make money, but to remain internally detached and duty-bound.
You do the duty because it must be done, not because you're lost in the party.
Which is incredibly difficult, and that's why this star is so respected. It manages the material world without being corrupted by it, ideally.
Speaking of the material world, we have to talk about the Shakti. The power, Chayani Shakti.
With the power of accumulation.
But the formula the texts gave was so specific. It wasn't just work hard, get rich.
No, it is a formula of union. The texts say the basis above is wealth from one's own family. The basis below is wealth from the partner's family.
And the result is accumulation.
It is. It's the merging of assets. This brings us right back to the marriage contract.
It's not the lone wolf winning the lottery.
No, it's about the resources that become available when you enter a partnership. It's the joint bank account that lets you buy the house you couldn't afford alone. The merger of two companies.
It sounds calculated.
Yeah.
Almost cold.
It is organized. Remember, we're in Virgo territory now. It's about organizing the resources you gain through union, setting up the household.
Okay.
But we shouldn't see it as greedy, because the sun is the ruler and the sun is naturally generous. This accumulation isn't for hoarding.
Ah, right. The sources said it's free with its sharing.
Charity, benevolence, philanthropy, you accumulate so you can be the patron. You can't be Aryaman, the noble helper, if your pockets are empty.
You build the fortune so you can fund the hospital.
That is the high road of this star.
But this brings up a contradiction that really jumped out at me. We're talking charity, friendship, marriage. But The nature of this star is classified as Kshatriya warrior.
And Ugra fierce.
Why is the star of marriage a warrior? I picture a warrior with a sword, not a best man with a ring.
I know, it is a striking contradiction, isn't it? But think about what a marriage or a contract actually is in a social context. It's a fortress.
You're creating a boundary.
You're defining a unit. You're saying, this is us, and that is you. You are defending that unit from the rest of the world. The warrior is guarding the gate.
I see. So it's a warrior who fights for dharma, for social order.
Exactly. Aryaman is kind, but the texts say he loses his temper and acts harshly when firmly contradicted. Why? Because he represents the rules. If you break the contract, the warrior comes out.
It's the sheriff, not the bandit.
It's the sheriff. And there's another layer. The star is Dhruva fixed, permanent. Unlike Purva Phalguni, which was movable, swaying in that hammock, Uttara Phalguni lays foundations that are meant to last for centuries.
The sources mention George Washington.
A classic example. He fought a war, that's the warrior part. But what did he do with the victory? He didn't just keep conquering. He laid the foundation of a capital city. He established a constitution.
He signed the contract.
He signed the contract. And he designed a system meant to outlive him. Yeah. That is this energy. It's looking at a chaotic field and saying, we are going to build a foundation here and we are going to defend it.
That makes the fierce label make so much more sense. It's the ferocity required to maintain order.
And to maintain a marriage in a chaotic world, it takes a warrior spirit to stay committed. That's the back legs of the bed. It holds the weight.
We've painted a picture of a very capable, solid, noble star. It's the adult in the room.
Yeah.
But we always have to look at the shadow. What do we lose in this transition from romance to stability?
Well, the source material offers a profound warning. Because this star is so deeply wired for union, for partnership, its shadow is a crushing sense of loneliness.
If you don't have the contract, you feel incomplete.
Deeply. If they aren't in a relationship or don't have that social standing, they can feel like they don't exist. They can become dependent on the relationship for their very identity.
So what's the lesson?
The lesson, according to the texts, is that the Uttara Phalguni native must learn to befriend aloneness.
Befriend aloneness. That's a beautiful phrase.
It is. It's very distinct from being lonely. Loneliness is a lack. Aloneness is a state of being. Remember King Janaka, surrounded by people, but alone with his lamp.
So the goal is to be complete in yourself.
So that the union is a choice, not a desperate necessity. Aryaman wants a contract between equals, not a dependency.
It's interesting that the remedy for the star of partnership is to learn to stand alone. This has been heavy, but in a good way. Solid.
We've formalized the chaos of love.
We have. We've gone from the double sun ego of Leo into the service of Virgo. We've met the cosmic best man. We've built the structure. But I want to leave everyone with a thought to chew on.
Okay.
We've talked about building the structure, signing the contract, becoming the warrior for social order. But what happens when that warrior energy has nothing left to defend on the outside? When the contract is signed and the house is built, where does that fierce energy go if it doesn't turn outward?
Does it turn inward?
That is the question. Think about that. We'll see you in the next deep dive.